Hello, and welcome to Your Path to Sell, Capstone Strategic's video series dedicated to smart strategies for making the most of this critical step in your business's future. We've already talked about different elements of readiness and valuation, but today we're looking ahead to the transaction itself and answering the question, do I really need a transaction advisor? I'm Richard Frank, Chief Marketing Officer at Capstone Strategic, and I'm joined by Brian Goodhart, our Director of M&A Advisory Services. Brian has led mid-market transactions for more than 20 years on both the buy and sell sides. He guides clients throughout the entire deal process to help them maximize value and realize their long-term goals. Brian, we live in an age of do-it-yourself. So let's dive right into the biggest question of the episode. Why is it so important for an owner to have a transaction advisor when selling a business?
So it's definitely a question we get quite a bit. Do I need a transaction advisor at all? And I want to be clear, not everyone does, particularly smaller businesses. Uh, However, you very quickly reach a size level where transactions are exceptionally complicated. And as an example, I will tell you that, if you think of like the largest asset you own, that's not a business. For most people, it's probably a home or real estate. And so you can imagine whenever you purchase a home or real estate, or whenever you go to sell a home or real estate, you have a real estate broker, you may have an attorney that gets involved, because there are a ton of different things you need to understand about that transaction. And so those people are there to assist you and protect you from all of the things that could potentially go wrong. And that's why you use them to conduct these transactions. Now, homes and real estate's very static. It's not dynamic. A business is a dynamic thing. It is full of individuals, it's full of intellectual property, it's full of relationships, and all of those things are constantly in motion. So now, if you imagine how difficult a real estate transaction is, now you add this exceptional layer of complexity on top of it. And crucially, the complexity does not necessarily scale with size. So you could have even a business that's fairly small, doing a few $1,000,000 in revenue, that is exceptionally complicated, with complicated intellectual property, complicated rights, complicated employment agreements, and all of those things have to be a part of a transaction. And in order for that to be done well, you need someone who can help work you through this, who can help position you correctly in the marketplace, and when you found that potential buyer, can help navigate you to a successful close. And that's really why a transaction advisor is necessary, because we're dealing with something that is inherently more complex, more multifaceted, and more dynamic. And we're dealing with a dynamic market that has to be met with a certain level of expertise.
So when you talk about those complexities, the dynamic market, like what are the risks of trying to manage a sales process completely on your own?
Well, again, another good question. And there are myriad risks that you encounter. And so again, let's go back to our analogy of selling a piece of real estate. When you sell your home, the primary point that you're trying to negotiate on is the price of the home. And so you have one vector that you're concentrating on. However, in a business, you have multiple vectors that you're concentrating on. So for example, you're negotiating certainly on price, but also how will that consideration be received? Will you get all of that money up front? Will you have an earnout? Will you have a seller's note? Will you have rollover equity? There'll be some degree of involvement afterwards. Rarely when you sell a house does someone say, hey, I'm going to buy your house, but you're still going to come mow the grass, right? That doesn't happen with selling a home, but it does happen when you sell a business, where someone says, hey, there are these functions I'd still like you to perform after the transaction. So you can start to see these layers of complexity, and any one of these can go awry. And this is an area where, if they go awry, the deviation can be exceptionally costly. And so you have to really protect yourself. You have to understand what it is you want from a transaction, both financial and non-financial. You have to go into those negotiations with a buyer with eyes wide open as to the buyer's ability to meet those needs. And then you need someone to shepherd you through to the closing of that transaction to meet the majority of those needs.
So when you talked about a lot of the complexities and that sort of stuff, there was a lot of situations of when something goes wrong or something is unexpected in that sort of regard. Let's say through the process, things are going smooth and sort of, but are there still risks there because there's, elements that maybe a business owner who's never sold the business, never sold a business before, right? Are there sort of surprises just in the process inherently that aren't tied to issues or problems, but just literally the complexity of the transaction in and of itself?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, the single biggest factor is that most business owners don't know what they don't know. They tend to believe that the sale of a business is fairly straightforward. They think that it will be there's a document we'll sign some sort of purchase agreement, and that will transition the ownership of my business over to the new buyer. And in reality, that's just not the case. There are tons of different documents that have to be negotiated and signed. So going back to the example I used a moment ago, let's say that you do decide to sell your business. Well, what type of sale are you going to do? Is it going to be an asset sale or a stock sale? Each has its own, positives and negatives. When we talked a moment ago about different forms of consideration, okay, how much cash are you going to get down? Are you going to be a party to a new shareholder or operating agreement if you're getting rollover equity? Is there a seller note? So will there be promissory note agreements? Will there be an employment agreement if you become a new employee? All of these things are the transaction. The transaction is not just the purchase agreement. It is all of these things in totality. So you have to look at these transactions holistically. But if you've never done this before, you have no idea what's coming your way. You have no idea what will be expected of you, and you have no idea what to ask from the other party to get those needs you have met. So this is where we come in, and we really are working to understand what our clients need, work with them to express that, to understand it, and then go out in the market and help them get it, help them make it happen. That's those two things, understanding the needs of our clients and then going and getting it for them. That's the essence of what we do.
So what should an owner be looking for in deciding, who the right transaction advisor would be?
Sure, sure. So again, there are lots of great transaction advisors out there. And so the thing I would tell any business owner is to talk to talk to different transaction advisors and make sure you have a good understanding of those two core functions. One, is that transaction advisor listening to me as I talk to him or her about my needs and the needs and wants of my ownership group and my management team? And again, I don't mean just the price of the business. I also mean all of those other things that go into making transactions happen. And then secondly, what is the ability of this group to go out and make this deal happen? What is their ability to go out into the marketplace armed with the knowledge of what I want and go out and find me that buyer that can meet the majority of my needs? That's what leads to a successful transaction. That's what leads to happy business owners post-close. So that's what I would tell anyone who's looking into this. Talk to transaction advisors and really hone in on those two segments of the process, understand what they do and how they do it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Brian, as always. And thanks to our viewers for joining along. The education and advice that we've shared in this series hopefully provides a solid roadmap to a sale, but navigating the complexities of that path requires the right partner. Selling your business is too important, too complex, and too personal to enter the process without someone protecting your interests. If this truth resonates with you, let's talk. Reach out to Capstone Strategic on LinkedIn. You can email us at growth@capstonestrategic.com or call 703-854-1910. Until next time, thanks for joining us and have a great day.